Let's return now to the Albanese government's hate speech laws. And joining me now is the Australian's Legal Affairs contributor, Chris Merritt. Chris, I mentioned in my editorial just now your piece today in the newspaper about the flaws, you say, in these hate speech laws and how you argue that the religious carve-outs will actually serve as a how-to guide for the likes of hate preachers. How will they do that?
Well, the bottom line is, unless the so-called religious text defence is dropped, taken out of this proposed bill, it will undermine the overall legitimate purpose of the bill, which is to suppress the promotion of hate speech on the basis of race, Jew hatred. If it goes ahead, if this bill goes ahead with that defence, I think it would be worse than doing nothing. It would be a betrayal of reasonable members of the Islamic community who are deeply opposed to religious leaders who promote racial hatred. It would in fact validate the acts of any religious leader, Islamic religious leader, who has criticised Jews and linked that back to religious texts. It would effectively amount to the federal government, the federal parliament, endorsing that approach, that approach going forward is perfectly legitimate. Go for your life, continue it. So it wouldn't work. The law wouldn't work. It would betray any possibility that reasonable members of the Muslim community could put pressure on their religious leaders to throttle back and take a more reasonable approach. So I don't think it should go ahead with the defence. Without the defence, a completely different story. I think it's clear. I know there's different views on this. My view comes down right in the middle here. I think it should go ahead without that defence. I think it should go ahead quickly after the law is redrafted. It clearly needs to be redrafted. There's been a series of problematic areas that have already come to light. Sussan Ley's remarks this afternoon I thought were surprisingly strong. I've not seen her make anything quite as strong as that.
I think that it was her strongest speech yet.
So I think her points are quite good. I think the problem with the government's bill is that I think what they've done is, in a rush, they've simply copied a flawed Act of the New South Wales Parliament that was introduced about February last year, I think, despite misgivings by the former Chief Justice of New South Wales, Tom Bathurst, who warned against using incitement to hate as a criterion for criminal law. He preferred a more orthodox approach of basing criminality on incitement to violence. Now, the New South Wales government disregarded Mr Bathurst's concerns and legislated. The federal government, I think, has simply copied that approach, and that explains why it's there. I've written repeatedly in The Australian about my misgivings about the New South Wales approach, warning that it would do exactly what I think the federal law will now do.
Is this where you say in your piece you have concerns over the test for liability, for vilification, or is that something else?
That's separate. That's a separate concern. I think that does need to be addressed. The test for liability seems very close to the test in Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act, which looks a bit too subjective for my mind. If it relies on the assessments of a reasonable member of the group who claims to have been targeted by hate speech. To my mind, a proper approach for criminal law would be to structure the test for liability on the standards of the general community, not the standards of the sector of the community that claims to have been the victim of hate speech. So I think it's problematic. I would like to have seen this law enacted quite quickly. I don't think that's going to happen now.
No, it doesn't seem that way unless maybe the Greens come to the party or the government strikes some kind of deal with the Greens, which, I mean, I think, God forbid, it could make it even worse if that were to happen.